Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My wife released our bunny in the middle of our yard. The hawk got a free meal. After that, am I the jerk for canceling my credit card after my boyfriend refused to return it to me? And after that, clock watching for professionals. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to release a bunny in the middle of the yard. Even I wouldn't do something that silly, Reddit boy. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My wife released our bunny in the middle of our yard. The hawk got a free meal. A few days ago, my kids found a little bunny and brought it home, and they were begging us to keep it. But we can't keep a wild rabbit and already have several pets. The bunny was big enough to fend for itself, and I tried to nicely tell my kids that it needs to go back home to its family. They were sad, but agreed to take it back. However, I was busy with work and couldn't go with them, so my wife went. I told her to take the bunny to some thorn bushes at the end of the property and let it go there, because that's the safest place to do it. We live in a country area ripe with animals that would eat the rabbit. Well, I went back to work, but a little while later, my kids came running back into the house, loudly crying, with my wife trailing after them and trying to calm them down and telling them that it's not so bad. I asked what happened, and my eldest said that Mama made them let the bunny go in the middle of the yard and a hawk took it. They even described what it sounded like. I was upset, then got angry at my wife for not letting it go the way I'd advised. She defended herself and said it was just a bunny, the kids will get over it. But I said that was absolutely wrong, and I warned her about animals that would try to get it. And now our kids had to see the poor bunny get carried away by a hawk. Both of our kids shut themselves in their rooms and they stopped talking to their mother for days. And when she tries to talk to them, they call her a monster. I've tried to mediate, but my kids are still mad. And I'm still mad at my wife for how things went down. She's angry with me for not having her back and said as husband and wife, we're always supposed to support one another. But we got into an argument where I pointed out numerous times she has not had my back. She started crying too and has gone off to our room to pout. I'm thinking I messed up now, so a friend told me to ask here. Am I the jerk? Edit. Yes, I understand hawks need to eat too, and they're all over our area. I just didn't want my kids to see that happen to the bunny. They're 4 and 5 years old. I grew up a country boy and my wife was a city girl, and when I was growing up, any similar situation with a wild critter that was caught, we'd try to let it go in a place where it would have a fighting chance. Edit 2. I did not yell at her. Where exactly in my post does it say that I did that? I admonished her, yes, but I didn't yell. Not even when we argued later on. We did that in whispers so the kids wouldn't hear us. And I couldn't go with them to release the bunny because I couldn't get away from my office. I work from home half the week and have to be near the phone at all times to answer a call while on the clock, unless on my lunch break. I also never once called my wife the names that our kids are calling her after what happened with the bunny. And I've tried to make them stop. I would never call my wife such a thing. That would make me a bully. Edit 3. Apologies for so many edits, but my kids were not playing in the yard unsupervised. My wife is a stay-at-home mom and was with them when they found the bunny. They came running back to the house with it, and I had to tell them it needed to be let go. Not the jerk. To the people saying you're the jerk because your wife didn't summon the hawk, you warned her specifically that there were animals that would try to get the rabbit when it was released. You predicted that this would happen. Your wife ignored it, and it happened. Now, I'm not going to say that she hurt the rabbit, but she should be equally horrified that this happened in front of them and should apologize for it going down the way that it did. She didn't summon the hawk, but it sounds like you live in an area where it didn't need to be summoned. I live in an area like this with lots of animals. What the wife did was unbelievably stupid and lazy. Did she just not want to walk that far? How long has she lived in the area, and she didn't know that the bunny would be toast if she let it go in the open? A friend of mine lost a small dog to a coyote in the middle of the day. He came out of nowhere, snatched the dog, and that was it. When you live in a place like this, you need to be aware. Not the jerk. I sadly know people who would think, we'll release the rabbit where we get the best view and can enjoy it hopping away, and totally ignore the, it's not safe that way, because they think their enjoyment of the moment trumps the animal's safety. The same people that have shocked looks on their faces when things go bad, they like to pretend that they didn't know better and are totally innocent when you told them it was a bad idea. Some people are selfish like that. OP's wife is one of those people. I'm the neighborhood rabbit lady. Aside from having domestic rabbits, I'm the one people call when they have a nest that they want gone or their cat brought home a baby. If I'm forced to relocate bunnies, I have a few spots that I take them to, and all involve crawling through brush to get them to the best spot possible. Do I know they might not make it? Yeah, and that makes me sad, but the least I can do is give them a decent shot. He wasn't just a bunny, and you're not the jerk. The only way your wife has a chance of earning her kids' trust and respect is by owning up to her failure. She failed that baby bunny 100%. She needs to acknowledge this before your kids and accept the rightful judgment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Sometimes if you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself. You can tell someone over and over the right way to do something, and they'll still mess it up. Am I the jerk for canceling my credit card after my boyfriend refused to return it to me? I'll preface by saying that me, 27, and my boyfriend, 30, have been together for 3 years and a half. I've been jumping from one job to another while he's been unemployed due to health issues that affected his performance at work. Usually, I'm the one handling rent, bills, groceries, etc. I use my credit card to make any purchase I want. Last week, my boyfriend out of nowhere asked for my credit card. I asked why, since I'm the one who handles payments and supermarket trips. He told me he wanted to buy some food, and I agreed to let him take it, but I told him to return it later. He got back later, and when I asked about my credit card, he was like, "What credit card?" I thought he was joking, so I told him to just give it back. He said he'd just keep it with him. I asked why, and he said so he could start handling paying for stuff on my behalf. I felt uncomfortable. I said I'd rather not burden him with this stuff and asked him to just hand over the credit card. He refused and said that he'll just keep it since it doesn't have that much money anyway. I was livid. I tried to argue, but he told me to just trust him and let him keep it, and he swore that he wouldn't spend a penny from it. Next morning, I went and canceled it and then registered a new one. He must have tried to use it because he called and was confused, asking why the credit card was not valid anymore. I told him it's because I canceled it and registered a new one. He lost it and started going off on me, saying he couldn't believe I had this level of petty and kept on about how I don't trust him with my finances and how I've been financially mistreating him lately. I hung up on him. The argument continued at home, and he called me paranoid and unreasonable and all that. Then he started cold-shouldering me and sulking about it for days. I do feel like I hurt his feelings and showed an amount of distrust towards him. Am I the jerk for canceling the credit card? Edit, adding in some info. Like I said, he has a physical disability that limits his opportunities for work. He receives no disability benefits because he doesn't want to. He refuses to acknowledge he has a disability and pretends that it doesn't even exist at all. When I tell him to look for a job, he'd blame people for purposely refusing to employ him and say that they look down on him like he's lacking or beneath them. He comes from a humble background, no longer has contact with family due to abandonment issues, but he has some friends to lean on. Since someone asked, the answer is I do almost 80% of the chores while he does the other 20%. Reason for that is his disability. Finally, I pay for rent, bills, groceries, his med, and transportation as well, so I needed the card to be constantly with me. Not the jerk. He swore he wouldn't spend a penny from it, followed by, the next day he must have tried to use it. Your instincts were excellent, as was your decisive and immediate action. You know what he wanted was wrong. Trust yourself. He found out you canceled it because he tried to use it, even though he promised he wouldn't. But you're the paranoid one? Right. Not the jerk. He's definitely gaslighting you. Also, beware. Since he isn't working, that means he can get to the mail first and take the replacement card when it arrives. He contributes what to your life? Does he help around the house or have a side hustle to help pay bills? Sounds like he's just leeching off of you. OP. Let me make a list. A. He doesn't and can't bring in money due to a lack of employment caused by his physical disability. B. He does some things around the house, but nothing compared to what I do. Again, his physical disability gets in the way. C. He has no contact with his family. He only has 3 close friends and that's about it. D. He has a number of mental health issues and it's always affected our relationship. I also pay for his medication. You deserve more. A good partner will always contribute even when they're navigating their own issues. You can and should leave him. Exactly. I have several physical and mental disabilities as well, and I try my hardest to best help my partner in any way I can. Same goes for them. They're in a similar situation, and we help build each other up instead of tearing each other down. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. What I want to know is, where did you find this guy? Clock watching for professionals. My favorite example of malicious compliance happened when I worked some 20 years ago for a local government agency here in the US, which shall remain nameless. We were a small, well-run office with a supervisor who had a very laissez-faire style of leadership, and this worked. Do your job. If you have an idea, develop a program and we'll try it. If it doesn't work, no harm done. Take what we can learn from it and use that on another program. Many programs develop spontaneously, and there was a very collegial relationship within the department between everyone from the department head down to the administrative staff and with other departments across the organization as well. That department head retired and was replaced by a retired Army colonel who was very controlling in his style. Suddenly, multiple degreed professionals who were used to a significant amount of autonomy and who constantly worked well beyond the hours for which they were paid were being told that they could not extend their lunch hour by 15 minutes once a week to participate in the local Rotary Club meetings, despite that we were expected to be involved in local civic groups as part of our job, and that they had to take a 15-minute break at the assigned time each day. As might be imagined, these administrative changes did not go over well. In response to the new top-down mandates, the informal leaders instituted policies of their own without ever saying a word. Suddenly, if their assigned break time occurred and they were on the telephone, they explained, "I'm sorry, but it's my assigned break time and I have to go now. I'll be back in 15 minutes." Meetings that were ongoing at 4:59 p.m. were abruptly adjourned with the note that those from the office were mandated to complete their activities by 5 daily, and it would be necessary to reschedule another meeting to complete whatever business was on the table. Mind you, these were people who regularly worked with elected officials at the national, state, and local levels, as well as the public. When lunchtime or 5 came, they immediately stopped work, often simply leaving the file drawer open with the files laying on top as they walked away. It didn't take long for support staff to follow suit. This was not the kind of action to which those that had worked with them in the past were accustomed, nor was it what one would expect from professionals. It was, however, exactly what was mandated by the new program. Nothing was ever coordinated between them or the other staff. It wasn't long before the new department head was getting a call from their supervisor, who also happened to be a retired colonel, suggesting that they get a handle on the situation and fix it immediately. Of course, there was no disciplinary action because there were no rule violations. Indeed, there was hyper-compliance with the rules established. Things never completely relaxed under the new department head, and I'm sure he wondered why there were no more innovative projects proposed. He had effectively put out the spark that was at the heart of the group, and within a year or so, there was about a 60% turnover. Am I the jerk for refusing to split rent with my boyfriend? I, female 23, have been dating my boyfriend, Jake, male 23, since our freshman year of college. In our last year of undergrad, we decided to rent an apartment together. We split everything 50-50, including utilities, groceries, and rent. We continued living together in the same town as our college after graduation, but recently we both got jobs in Chicago, and we're currently living downtown. My dad works in real estate, and he has multiple investment properties. My dad generously allowed me to live in one of his properties rent-free, but he said that my boyfriend would have to pay him $400 a month for rent. My dad is very protective, but he's been nothing but kind to my boyfriend. My dad's reasoning for making my boyfriend pay rent is that he wants to be sure that my boyfriend is with me for me, and not because he will have a free place to live. Keep in mind, if my dad was renting this apartment out to tenants, he would charge $2,100 a month for rent. Very ritzy building in the middle of downtown Chicago. My boyfriend is mad at me because he asked me for my half of the $400 for rent, and I explained to him that I will not be paying rent. My dad is only charging him. He says that we've been splitting rent for the past 2 years, so why would we stop now? Our rent in our college town was $1,200, so we were both paying $600 a month. Our apartment in Chicago is significantly nicer, and he's paying $200 less a month than what he was in college. Is the idea that my dad doesn't charge me for rent, but charges my boyfriend rent so crazy? Should I suck it up and pay half because I can afford it? Edit. Jake and I still split utilities and groceries 50-50, and when we go out on date nights, we switch off who pays for it. If he pays one week, I'll pay the next. Not the jerk. Rent isn't $400, it's $2,100. Point out that if he wants to split rent, then do so by having your dad charge the full amount, which means his portion is $1,050. Pay your dad that, and dad can give it back to you or put it in escrow to save for a future house. The $400 is a major discount for him, and dad lets you have it for free. Not the jerk. A nice ritzy building? Check. Located in downtown? Check. Only $400 a month? Double check. Near your jobs? Check. Getting the family discount from girlfriend's dad? Check. What more does your boyfriend want? Clearly, he's not seeing the bigger picture. He's getting a lot of perks because of you, and he only has to pay a fraction of the rent. Doesn't he realize that millions don't have that luxury in these critical times of the economy? Plus, he's failing miserably with your dad's test. Your dad's suspicions are kind of right. Your boyfriend is either 1. Greedy and disingenuous, or 2. Stupid. Either way, it's not attractive. Gentle, everyone sucks here. This sounds like a really good way to build resentment. You've been together for a while, and your dad is still questioning your boyfriend's loyalty. Is there justification for this? Why does anybody think it's appropriate for your father to put your boyfriend through some weird litmus test? Do you agree with your dad that your boyfriend's intentions need to be proven by financial control? What is your boyfriend supposed to say here? Is he supposed to be thrilled that your father is treating him like a potential enemy rather than another person who loves his daughter and wants to care for her? I don't think this is really about the money for him, so much as it's insulting to be told the reason he has to pay when you don't is because he's untrustworthy with your heart. So everyone sucks here because 1. You're an adult and your dad is putting you against your boyfriend by implying you can't trust his intentions. Rather than having an adult conversation with you, he's manipulating the situation to his favor to test your boyfriend. And quite frankly, you should be insulted that he doesn't trust your judgment enough to talk with you about his concerns in a tangible and open way. 2. You think it's perfectly reasonable for your dad to test your boyfriend's loyalty through financial control. 3. Your boyfriend isn't communicating well, focusing on financial equality when the issue is an opinion your father has and his ability to exercise control over your choices and your boyfriend's by offering you something you can't refuse even when it signals unhealthy behaviors and sets a precedent that your boyfriend may always be challenged and made to feel a need to repeatedly prove himself. There's no such thing as a free ride. Being told to pay rent is a reasonable ask. It's the why here that makes the whole situation gross. It isn't about ensuring responsibility or minimizing financial losses. It's about keeping you and your boyfriend under his thumb. Well, who do you think is the jerk? The boyfriend or her dad? Please let us know. That last comment just about made my head explode. Boyfriend needs to count his blessings. Dad is doing them a huge favor. Call everyone, you say? Explain everything? Sure, boss, I'm on it. A little bit of backstory. I used to run a medium-sized, 40-room hotel down in Florida for a couple of years, not that long ago. The hotel was a couple of old neighboring motels bought by a foreign investor and then extensively renovated into a single modern boutique hotel. The location was amazing for this type of business. Before the lockdown, it was indeed a prime piece of property. The property manager that ran it at the time had built the hotel up with the idea of a place people would be really happy to return to, especially considering that the person who had run the place at first, an ex-girlfriend of the owner, had chased all the old motel guests off. Apparently, and I quote one of our former guests here, "We don't want your kind here," she told people, meaning older generation, mainly middle-class Americans from the Midwest, spending their family vacations down in Florida every year for decades. Also, backtracking a bit to a point rather important for the story, the owner is not a nice person, nor had he ever worked in or had run the hospitality business. His main line of business is retail, abroad, very much so, and he's self-absorbed entitled narcissist with an attitude. He had constantly meddled, making incredibly foolish or downright harmful decisions during the renovation, and then forcing the property manager to carry them out. She was smart and competent enough to usually find a workaround, but sometimes he insisted further. Things weren't smooth. So fast forward to me starting to run the actual hotel part of the business, which at first the owner hadn't meddled in that much. Our main focus groups at the time had been the cruise ship crowd, regular vacation goers, the conferences nearby, and finally the annual events. Multiple music festivals, holidays, as well as the, drumroll, International Boat Show. The last one being a week-long affair of yacht-building companies selling their boats to rich folks, 10-minute walk from our hotel. The The place I managed was a bit too low-key for the rich crowd. But guess where all those yacht-building companies wanted a room to place all their staff at? We had 40 of them, with multiple beds and full kitchens. And we had built the place up with the regular guests in mind, including the festival goers and the yachtsmen, especially the yachtsmen. Meaning discounts, free upgrades, personalized approach, regular touch-ups, even occasional barbecue parties. I was on the first-name basis with quite a few of the boat-building managers, as well as boat captains. Because when a boat is sold, they often stay around, get repaired, and the crew has to stay somewhere, and our little place was known in the circles as a good place for them. I had made it my goal to make it attractive for the target audiences, and in some of them, everyone knew each other and word got around. I'm a firm believer in the hospitality business being run with the client in mind, not the profit. So we had an amazing year of building up connections and making the place really nice to a few very specific circles. And then lockdown hit. The hotel was almost empty for half a year, had to furlough most of our staff for a while. Eventually, the lockdown was sort of forgotten about, at least in Florida. Cruise ships hadn't come back, but the regular vacation goers had, en masse. We got very busy, very fast. However, the owner wasn't thrilled with me hiring a new front desk receptionist. Why bother if I myself could do this job as well, right? Make housekeepers, we had 2 of them total for the entire place, do laundry as well, get the property manager to do accounting too. At the same time, the owner had bought a yacht, just because, and attempted to make our property manager run the boat as well. So after a few more months of struggle, she had finally had enough and she quit. Good for her, we're still friends even today. The owner replaced the property manager with his daughter. Like father, like daughter, exactly same type. However, in their country, manager is manager. They don't get the difference between a property manager, does the building or the property side of things, and a business manager, does the business in that building. She immediately had decided that her job was to run the hotel, and my job was to do what I was told. And the first thing they do, the father and the daughter, is look at the boat show just 1 month ahead, as well as the festive season a couple of months later. They had a brilliant idea of making more money. After all, why had we sold all the rooms that cheap? Triple rates for the boat show. We could easily make twice as much, right? And why offer free parking when no one else around does that? Not like it's a selling point, right? So they tell me to change the room rates on existing reservations and start charging for the parking on reservations that were made with the free parking listed. And above all, charge more for the boat show. On the rooms that had been sold a year ago, mostly face-to-face when people were checking out after the last show, and it was apparently up to me to call them and let them know that we had raised the rates by 50%. Oh, and that parking for the show is now $100 a day per vehicle. I was not happy with the idea, to say the least. For whatever reason, I had assumed that this is not how things are done in the US, even down in Florida, despite the infamous Florida man. Nor did I feel comfortable calling people, most of whom I knew, and telling them this banger of an idea. So I fought against this decision as hard as I could. I came up with various reasons as to why we should not do it, pointed out how we run the place, argued the point of the reputation. The owner hadn't listened, but said, "I hear you, but trust my business acumen. After all, I've made millions." The daughter had listened to me very carefully. Her reply, "Your direct superior had decided and given you instructions. It's not your place to think and question things. Just call them all and explain everything. That's your job." So, a bit of malicious compliance then. I called our guests, and not just the boat people. I called most regulars of ours. Took a while. Then I explained what was happening. I told them the truth, how things are run now, what new ideas are there, etc. I also told them that I was very much against these new decisions and that I probably won't be here much longer. Most of them thanked me for the information and said they will be in touch. A few local yachtsmen asked if they could come in to discuss things. In the end, the boat people were forced to pay extra. It's impossible to find a good property at any price range close to the boat show location just a month before the show itself. The local ones who came in and met with the owner and his daughter got a great deal of free parking after the price adjustment. I struggled to keep a professional face. However, when I met them on my own after their talk with the owner or when I talked with the other regulars over the phone, almost all of them thanked me for my efforts and told me they will not be back. Neither would anyone they know. Also, if I would go to a new place, would I please let them know so they can go there too? Well, that very week I gave the owner's daughter my notice. left just before the show began, letting her be the one to deal with the storm, since she insisted on being the boss so much. From what I hear, she hasn't managed it all. Right now, the place is run by a shady management company that just doesn't care, with the daughter supposedly running the front desk. No one is answering any calls or checking emails. Reviews plummeted. They hadn't even renewed their license or paid Booking.com and Expedia fees, who are threatening legal action now. And apparently, the owner and his daughter blame me and the property manager for everything, since it's our leaving that did them over. Whatever. Am I the jerk for refusing to let it go after my parents falsely accused my brother of stealing from their house? I have an older half-brother, Rory. We share the same dad. I live with my mom and stepdad. Rory comes to see me regularly, and we usually go out together. I'm 15 and Rory is 24, and I have two stepsisters who are 11 and 9. A few months ago, some valuable items were stolen from our house. Some jewelry, my stepdad's expensive watches, and some cash. They immediately accused Rory of doing it and banned me from seeing him or talking to him. I defended Rory, and I was grounded as a result. The accusation was false because that day Rory picked me up outside and never came in, but they didn't believe me and accused me of lying to protect him. The police had no reason to believe it was my brother, and they didn't even consider him a suspect. About 2 weeks ago, the thief was found out, as he did the same thing at a relative's house, and they had security cameras, and eventually confessed to stealing from us as well. It obviously was not Rory. It was my stepdad's nephew, who had somehow copied his key without him noticing and used it to break in when nobody was home. I'm angry about all of this, and I asked them to apologize to both me and Rory for their false accusations, which my mom said she's happy to do, but my stepdad said no and told me I just have to learn to move on. Later that day, I reminded him to be extra careful about his keys when he visits his relatives to be sure nobody steals it and he wouldn't end up accusing people I love for no reason. This morning, he was looking for his sunglasses and couldn't find them, and I suggested that maybe I should help him find it before he goes to accuse someone innocent of stealing. He looked at me and told me to stop being rude. My mom talked to me and told me that I should stop being a jerk about it and apologize for not letting us move on from the unfortunate incident. I don't see why I should not advise caution when my family will be the scapegoat if things go wrong. Am I the jerk for expecting an apology and not moving on until I get it? Not the jerk. Accusing someone of stealing is a big deal. They just can't accept that they messed up. Also, why did they accuse him? OP. My stepdad just doesn't like him and always says he's a bad influence without any reason. Quick question. What about his nephew? Is he now banned from the house and can't be spoken to? If not, then your brother's banning wasn't about the theft. Your stepdad has a problem with your brother for no legitimate reason from what I'm seeing. OP. His nephew is also banned now, but he does have a problem with my brother for no reason. His reason is because it's not his son. Not the jerk. Did you get an apology for being grounded? Did Rory get an apology for being falsely accused? Are you allowed to see Rory again? You're being petty, but I understand why. Not the jerk. Why is it on you and Rory, the wronged parties in this scenario, to make nice and move on? Rory was slandered to the whole family. He could have been arrested if the cops were less conscientious. You were punished for providing him an alibi and not doing anything wrong. Yes, your stepfather acted abominably, and he owes you and Rory apologies. You should not be expected to just let this go because your stepdad did you wrong, and it means he will let you and other people suffer for his pettiness and pride in the future. Nobody should let him think that's okay. Am I the jerk for refusing to make an exception for my brother's son to attend my child-free wedding? Hi, I, female 33, am getting married come October to my fiancé Derek. Wedding planning went okay, but as soon as we started sending out invitations, the problems began coming our way. Thing is, Derek and I decided the wedding would be child-free. It wasn't out of the blue, and this possibility was there. I have a 42-year-old brother, Paul, who's married, but he and his wife really struggled to have a baby. They finally were blessed with a son that everyone calls a miracle and a rainbow baby. My nephew is 4 years old now, and everyone salutes him and treats him like a king, and also they turn a blind eye to any misbehaviors which he has, which has caused him to become loud, destructive, and out of control, and punishless. When Paul received the invitation and found out that kids weren't included, he and my mom lost it and decided on an urgent meeting with me and Derek. Paul said,
My son is an exception, right?
I said no, and this rule is to be followed by everyone. He argued that I was making a mistake by excluding my nephew. He and Mom went on about how he's a miracle since he's their rainbow grayby/grandbaby. Then Paul said he had no problem with my wedding being child-free, but expects me to make an exception for his son. He explicitly said,
You can have your child-free wedding, but you're gonna have to make an exception for my son, and you know why.
Derek apologized and said we won't since our friends and my in-laws had kids too, but now have to leave them home and arrange for babysitters, and advised him to do the same. Paul was offended and said if his son isn't invited, then he won't come, and gave us an ultimatum to drop out if we don't edit his invitation. That caused my family to freak out because Paul is the only and oldest sibling I have, and they said his presence at the wedding is a must. I had an argument with Mom and Dad who said the fact I'm choosing this to be my hill to die on and treating Paul and my nephew like that was appalling. They emphasized how my nephew is special and I should be ashamed to exclude him even when the wedding is child-free. My parents said if Paul won't come, they won't come either, which devastated me a lot and caused me to break down. Derek said they were the ones being unreasonable and disrespectful of our wedding, and we should wait, maybe they'll come around eventually, but they've doubled down. This morning, my aunt and uncle dropped out as well as my other uncle last week. Paul told everyone and they're supporting him and they won't come unless I make an exception for my nephew, but that will upset my guests and they'll call me a hypocrite. My family is divided, saying I'm ruining my own wedding, basically saying this is all on me. ETA, because I see this question asked a lot. My family have normalized this behavior from Paul and also from his wife. Whenever I point out how unacceptable it is to expect everyone to cater to my nephew and his parents, Paul would chime in with,
She's jealous,
because he and his wife have a kid while I can't/don't. I was married before meeting Derek and divorced my ex-husband for my inability to have kids, but that's another story. Honestly, your wedding's probably going to be much better off without any of them there in the first place. They sound like a bunch of buffoons. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.